My name is Christopher Hyman. I'm a staff software engineer, a team lead for PureConnect. My team has spent quite a bit of time integrating in widgets for PureConnect, which includes pretty much everything that we've had now since 2018 R4. Before I get started, sometimes I have a tendency to go a little fast, so if I start going too fast at any point, please feel free to say, slow down. I'm totally receptive to it, and just let me know. So I'll try to be very conscious of that. So I have a lot of good information, I think, for everyone today, because there's been a lot of questions about custom extensions. It's a wide open sort of wild, wild west world with that, because there's just so much you can do with custom extensions for integrating in, a website infrastructure, CRM, over into PureConnect. And there's a lot of pretty hot topics right now with that. It's a lot of the ones are, how do I get, custom data over to PureConnect? Maybe I want to set a routing context, such as a skill. Maybe I want to add additional attributes for interaction, so forth. Maybe I want some data or context to appear in a data hub. Some way that is getting or connecting the rest of that journey over into PureConnect for the agent or for a handler or something like that. And we put a lot of effort into making that possible. So with that, I'll go over to kind of the agenda that I have to cover here. First, we're just going to cover what are custom extensions for widgets, what do they mean, how do they work. We'll cover just the basic use case of attaching data for PureConnect. That's kind of just the centerpiece that we'll cover there. How do custom extensions work? We'll cover how to get started with custom extensions. Then we'll go into these things called commands, CX bus commands for PureConnect. We'll put it all together and look at a nice example. Then we'll talk about this custom handler, which is a pretty neat thing. At any point within a custom extension, you have an integration point where you can execute a handler, get a response back from PureConnect, and you have this two-way ability to get data from PureConnect or send it to PureConnect directly through a handler at any point. So you can just imagine, really, what you could possibly do with that. So that's a pretty neat thing out there. The demo that we'll cover is kind of a contextual data pop, where we'll actually look at a custom extension, place it together, and show how that works. At the end, we'll look at a couple resources, and definitely open for questions. So what are custom extensions? What custom extensions really are is it enables the ability to extend the features and functionality of what we already have in widgets. At the core, that's really what they do. Custom extensions could be anything from a pop-up, like a survey or Weather Now. Widgets has a complete framework where you can just create an interface like this. Pretty easy. Going into those sort of examples isn't something we'll cover too much today, but it is something that is very possible. Also, you can have widgets or extensions that they're completely invisible. They're not anything that a customer would ever see, but they're facilitating some type of data transfer or data context. It could be that they're triggering a handler, or that they're setting some context for whenever you would start a web chat. So this would go back to PureConnect. So that's really what they are. The way that they're built is just in JavaScript. They're not really, they can be as complex as the web chat integration that we actually have for PureConnect. That's actually a custom extension. There's no fancy sort of things happening under the hood, no shortcuts. We use the same framework that customers and partners can use, and that's exactly how we use web chat through Genesis widgets for PureConnect. So if you hold that in mind, there's definitely a lot there that can be done. Other than that, the other key things to mention about custom extensions are that the way that they're included, widgets for PureConnect, they're hosted actually kind of in the cloud in terms of the file itself. So custom extensions, whenever they're used, they're actually hosted by a customer or partner. This just means that a JavaScript file that you have is just on the website somewhere or is uploaded. And then within the interaction, the widgets extension view that we'll see for Interaction Connect, all you have to do is just put the location and the name of the extension, and that actually just gets included when widgets loads, just automatically. It just works. So there's nothing else that you have to do there with that. So it's very easy to include this. So the main use case that we'll cover mainly is the case where we have dynamic skills-based routing, the contextual interactions where we want some type of information about what the customer is doing to get back to PureConnect. Because maybe we have a handler that we want to work with that data, or maybe we want something to transfer over to the agent window standard nodes. Those are the three main use cases that we'll kind of cover there. And if you're familiar with IWT at all, in the case we had an IWT, those should seem pretty familiar because we have routing contexts, we had custom info, those sort of fields there, and the attributes. Those same things carry over, and really what this is just the widgets version of those same concepts that you had for IWT that are just carried over. So how do custom extensions work? This part is pretty kind of shares the beauty of how this kind of plays in together. The widgets in itself is really based on this sort of bus-like structure. If you're familiar with PureConnect at all, you know that maybe, or anything with servers or anything like that, you know that maybe you have notifier, for example, and that all these different components are sending these messages out. And they all end up going through notifier to do some sort of action or something like that. You know, widgets works pretty similarly the same way, in the sense that, you know, say for web chat, if I want to close my web chat window, there's this command that gets issued that just says webchat.close. So whenever it wants to close, it never actually, even the plugin itself doesn't actually try to, you know, do some code to close the window. It is decoupled in the sense that it'll actually first send it out to the bus, and then it will come back to actually close it. What this means is that any one of these plugins has the ability to register commands or events, or they can subscribe to other events. And what that means is that a custom extension could know any time that a web chat receives any new message. It can just simply ask to know about it. The custom extension can easily open or close the web chat, not know anything about how web chat works. It just issues a command to close it. So by having everything decoupled that way, what it allows for is pretty much every unique extension here to kind of be or plugins kind of be their own unique sort of universe here that can kind of feed in and work with every other plugin very easily. And that's precisely why custom extensions can just fit right into this ecosystem and not have to have any sort of special, you know, there's no special like libraries or anything like that. It can just plug right in. There's a lot of good documentation on this for the PureConnect, or I'm sorry, for PureEngage widgets. There's in their API reference. For every single plugin, it lists out every single event that they'll publish, whether it's, you know, there is a new message, there is the web chat was closed, any sort of commands they can publish, those are all listed there. So it's really easy at any point to build something that can work with each of those things. I think I covered pretty much the main information there that I think is relevant at this point. The goal here is to really explain that the core of the widgets framework itself is based on this concept called CX bus. And CX bus is pretty much what's facilitating that centerpiece that's keeping everyone else informed of what's going on. And by extensions and plugins being built in such a way where they're event-driven, this allows other plugins or extensions to be able to control other things that are happening with widgets, and precisely why there's so much power in custom extensions and what you can do with them. So if we were to do kind of a play-by-play here about how these work, let's say, for example, we have this live chat window up here, and whenever we were to ask, for example, are you sure you want to end this chat session? Well, whenever that occurs, it's actually sending this webchat.closed over to the bus. Whenever that webchat.closed hits the bus, we have over here, for example, this custom widget, which is the survey. The survey is actually subscribing to events from the bus, and it can actually execute its own, whatever it would want to execute that's custom, and trigger other widgets or do anything else. So in this case, what's happening is the survey is actually subscribing to the webchat.closed event. So whenever the web chat closes, it wants to pop this survey. So by having this custom extension, in this case, which is subscribing to this closed event, as soon as the web chat is actually closed, and that event is published, the survey custom extension can have a subscription to that, which will cause it to pop up and open. So that's an example of how you would write a custom extension that is being driven off the behavior of another widget. I think I missed a slide here. Sorry about that. Here we go. Here we go. So this right here is supposed to show more of a play-by-play of what's going on. And on the left-hand side, we have the widgets. And on the right-hand side, we have the custom extension. In this case, it's a survey. In the middle is the bus. The bus is what's connecting them all together. It's pretty much what is the glue with everything that's there. So on the left-hand side, we have commands such as open, close, start. Whenever the web chat widgets, whenever it's actually starting, it actually registers those commands with the bus. So it says, you can open, I can close, and I can start. These are things I can do. When it registers those with the bus, those are things that other custom extensions can do as well. So on the right-hand side, the custom extension as well also can, for survey, for example, which is something that someone can create, those also can open, close, and start. So they're very, very similar. Whether they're native with something that Genesis has built, or they're something that's built by a customer partner, they're all treated kind of the same. Events, for example, for web chat could be when it's ready, when it's open, and when it's closed. A good example that we'll see here in a moment, whenever we're wanting to deal with, say, setting custom attributes or notes, is we're waiting for a ready event, which we'll see, because once the plugin is ready, we want to make sure that when we start the web chat, that if we want it to go to skills, have it tied to specific skills. If we want particular interaction attributes or notes, that's the actual event that we'll see here momentarily that we use to determine that we want to attach that data. So it's the same on both sides, whether it's a custom extension or something that we've built. In this particular case, the custom extension is wanting to subscribe to the webchat.closed event, which is kind of the animation we just saw. So whenever that happens, webchat gets started, it publishes an event that I started. At the point that there's a notification over here to our custom extension that this close did occur. And it's at that point that it can actually pop that survey. And then it can actually publish the event that the survey started. So that explains the flow of how these sort of things work. It's all really based on those commands, those events, and the way that your custom extension would work with web chat. If you're interested in those chats or doing something with those chats, maybe you want to make it to where, suppose that they're already logged in to the site, and you don't want to display a first name, last name, transcript email address, or a form. You want it to actually they're just going directly to a context where they're speaking to an agent, or something of that nature. Well, you can write a custom extension that bypasses that altogether and publishes the event that's necessary to go to that set. So that's just an example of the type of power that you can have with a custom extension, and that's all made possible through the fact that everything is mediated through using these events and these commands through the bus. So you don't have to really go into like custom code to understand what does a button look like for web chat. None of that's really required. You just need to know the bus command. And a lot of that's pretty well documented.
So you can't then, what would happen if you try to subscribe to something that didn't exist?
It's possible that they could throw an exception or something like that, but in that particular case, I don't think it would throw an exception. I just don't think that you would probably get any events that would come. But your standard handling that you would have, maybe just through good practice of catching or something like that, could be something you could do there as well.
And what about if there was a loading order kind of thing, like for instance that your server was loaded and it said, okay, I want to listen to web chat close, but the web chat was loaded later and registered those events. Then do you get them? Do you have to subscribe after the point that they're registered? So
that's kind of the point. That's kind of the benefit of having the ready event, because each particular plugin has its ready event where you can not take any action or begin taking action when you know it's ready. So that's how it kind of manages that sort of race, those race conditions of where you can possibly possibly be trying to subscribe to something, but it's too late and you missed the event. So a lot of plugins, each of the plugins typically tend to try to synchronize with those ready events. And that ready event could be just on the widget itself. It could be on a plugin. And so, for example, if you were going to want to key off, say, a closed event, for example, and you want to make sure that you're subscribing actually before that closed event occurs, you could use that ready event as a way to register your subscription. And I'll show an example of that as well. That's actually the part of what, that's something that's very commonly done, something that I actually do in an example as well, for the very same reason.
So, I mean, but similarly, I mean, the website ready doesn't exist until website has started and published that and registered that event, right?
Well, they have, depending on how high you want to go up, I guess the chain, so each of those, there's also an app.ready as well, where you could just wait till everything's ready. So it depends on what level of ready, I guess you want. They have a couple of them there. And the app.ready app is extended to mean widgets as a whole. So if you wanted to, you could use that as a way to say, I want to wait for everything to be ready.
But a widget can be then loaded. You could be in a ready state of everything ready, but then they could just add the widget.
So the way that widgets works is once widgets has been loaded and done, it's typically not, it doesn't really allow that easily for just adding new things on the fly. Usually there's a bootstrap process whenever widgets first starts, and that's when its configuration is processed and everything is loaded. So there is, I guess, there's a way of, I guess, an order of events of the way that it prefers things to happen. Of course, you could probably always find ways to engineer to what you would need, but generally it's following that flow of having your extensions load at runtime is usually preferred, because then you have the guarantee that you'll be within those time synchronizations.
So regardless of whether the person has actually got that widget up or selected that widget, all of them will be registered and they'll you basically, all of them get loaded, so to speak.
So that's a good point. So some of them are lazy loaded. You can choose to have some of them lazy loaded, meaning that they're technically registered, but they're not all the way loaded. So this way you're not having so much stuff potentially happen.
But the registrations have happened, so that gets rid of the other.
Yeah, the registrations do occur. And those registrations are just letting the bus know that it exists.
Okay.
Those are great questions. I mean, very, very good questions. Those are things that whenever you kind of get in the trenches with the custom extension, it's like, well, how the heck do I deal with this? So those are definitely very, very good questions. Yes, if we're getting started with custom extensions, and what this is meant to show here is really what does a custom extension look like at its smallest core. And that's really, whenever you inject a custom extension, you don't need, like a script header or, any of the other stuff that you'd expect with JavaScript. You really just need just the JavaScript. And that's because we actually inject the JavaScript directly into at load time. So really this here represents what is the smallest custom extension. What you're doing is you're calling this bus command on the bus. At load time, the bus itself is always placed under the widgets Genesis sort of namespace there on the window. And by calling this command, register extension, you've provided a name, and then everything that's enclosed under extension here in this function is pretty much your entire ecosystem that you have for how you're doing your subscriptions, how you're doing everything. And you'll see that it's getting passed in as CX bus. And CX bus is pretty much your window to how you're interfacing with everything. So this is pretty much your smallest example of what might be contained in a custom extension. And the world kind of is open from here with all the different things you can do, but this is really just what it looks like at the smallest core. So to actually set up a custom extension and have something, there isn't, maybe 5 lines that might be there at the very minimum to have something there to get started. So there isn't like a lot of different files, there isn't like a lot of different things that you have to track down. It's pretty easy to get started and go. So the next thing I want to cover here is that there's 3 commands kind of note, and each particular plugin that's out there has its own commands, its own events. In particular, we've added CX bus commands that can be used for custom extensions. And These particular commands are ones such as set chat routing context, set chat additional attributes, set chat notes. This is just showing an example of what the commands would look like. And I'll show more of a detail, but really, when you want to set these things, what they amount to is just calling basically the command method on CXBus and passing in the fact that you're the plugin name and those particular, whether it's set chat notes or so forth. So it's really easy to actually set those. And the glue that comes whereby what payload can be, and most of the time it's either string or just like a key value pair. That's the part where maybe you're reaching out to something else on the window or some other place or touch point that you have on the website of where you want to integrate in some data.
What did you say? You said this is documented, the CXBus command sequence is documented under in the Pure Engage CXBus documentation.
Well, instead of saying, I think it, on the website, I think it shows up under Pure Engage, but it's listed as Genesis Widgets reference.
Okay.
So, and under there, for every plugin that they have, there is a very descriptive, and I'll show actually an example of what that looks like at the end of the resources. But it's very, very detailed on what those events look like. It shows examples, how, and what they would expect back. They all return promises back as well. So, caveat there is that some of these custom commands for PureConnect will not appear there, but they are documented just recently. Some of these things are pretty new, so they are pretty new. So they are documented in PureConnect documentation as well, if they are specific to PureConnect, which is some of these are. So kind of putting it all together now, what we end up with here is what we really want to do. And if this is too small, I want to see if I can. I don't know if I can zoom in. Are you guys able to see this? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. What we really want to do is we want to register the extension. Once we register the extension, we want to register with CXBus. Because CXBus is what is going to give us access to events, commands, to publish, and that's really how we interface in with the rest of the widgets and the entire scope of things. Once we've done that, we want to set up a subscription to a particular event, and then we want to execute a command. So in this particular case, we have a skills and notes extension. Once we register our extension, we want to register the plugin with CXBus. And that's what gives us this service object here that allows us to subscribe to when the web chat service is ready. Once the web chat service is ready and it's loaded, at that point, in this example, I'm setting the routing context for the skills to Spanish for this context. And I want in the interaction, under an interaction connector or desktop, I want it to appear under notes that the customer number is that number. So that's really the length of what that would look like as an extension itself. There's not a whole lot there. It's pretty straightforward with what it's doing. You're waiting for an event to occur, and then you're basically publishing a command there that is going to set that information. I just hard-coded, for example, Spanish. That could be coming from anything on the website. It could be integrated into any type of CRM or otherwise that would determine what you really want that skill to be.
Does it still override what's set in the widgets config and the interaction connect?
Within the widgets config and interaction connect, you have the ability to set the queue, but you don't have the ability to set skills and notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is that because we don't actually know what that would be called in the customer's website. Maybe they choose to call it's under window. We have no idea what that would be. So there are ways that we've discussed about how we can integrate that in and make it more cohesive where you don't need a custom extension. We're just working on a way to where we can make sure that whatever the customer partner would be putting in is a way that we can use that to identify what they need to integrate with if it's coming from CRM or elsewhere. So the other thing I want to touch on before I kind of go into a demo of what this actually looks like is this other thing here, this widgets custom handler. We don't actually have a CXBus command for that yet. The way that, whether it's through this custom handler or each of these interaction attributes or each of these bus commands, they all actually work under the hood through endpoints that we've added for a web chat and a widgets API for ICWS. That's all we're really doing with widgets, is we're just hitting an ICWS endpoint that we have, a REST call. And it just turns out that these are unauthenticated in the sense that because these are anonymous web chat sessions, if you're starting a chat, you don't need to be, a registered or authenticated ICWS user to do that. So these are just that's how those things are working under the hood, and it's actually how this is working as well with how you would execute a widgets custom handler. We may add a CX bus command for that, so it's just as simple as just calling, execute handler. But the way that this would be accomplished now from a custom widget would be through just something like a fetch or something that would just hit an endpoint. But what this allows you to do really is this is a custom integration point that's based on a system handler for widgets integration. And the way it works is it's kind of similar to the other way that you'd execute a handler from ICWS, except what you do at this point, you have the selection tool step. So suppose that on your custom extension, you can come up with any function or event. Maybe it is, handle support scenario A. So then under that particular case, we're under handle support scenario A, then perhaps you pass it any given data. It could be a key value pair. Here, you would build out your selection, and you can then build out pathways. So you can actually use this one handler, and reuse this 100 times, anywhere you want, to how you would actually do that. Because what's happening at that selection step is it's saying, well, what type of function or event is this? And you can name it anything you want. So it's kind of multiplexed in the way that you actually have a way where anywhere through any of your custom extensions, you can give it any name you want, and then use that to key off a different pathway here in your handler. It can also return a response back. So it'll actually, within the custom extension, it's actually going to wait if it is requiring a response. So that's a pretty powerful way to integrate in with all the different capabilities that you have for handlers, or whether you're trying to get data to PureConnect for a handler to do something with, or you're trying to get it back to the website, if that were the case.
So when you do your example, are you gonna, because I'm definitely not picking up on how this gets invoked, so are you gonna have it in your example, or are you gonna?
This one's not an example. I am gonna have a couple more slides on it, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it as well. If I can either maybe today or tomorrow, maybe I can even show you an example of how it works.
Okay.
I'm pretty well set up to sort of do this sort of thing here at the moment, so.
Okay, all right, and last thing before you go on to the demo, hopefully I'm not getting ahead of you. Do you have the ability to get other events onto the CX bus, meaning like add a watcher on an attribute or an interaction? So we don't have the ability probably through there directly. We would probably use a handler maybe to do something close to that, but we don't have a way to start subscriptions because we're not registered. You could probably build a custom extension that would maybe have to be like an actual registered, ICWS sort of deal through there, but we don't have the ability to do things that would require an authorized or an authenticated ICWS session. However, there's probably a lot of ways you could proxy that or do that through a custom extension if you wanted to. I mean, really, if you wanted to, you could have a service that is authenticated through ICWS and is actually just proxying that back to a custom extension. So you could do it. That's the magic, sort of, with how these are set up. It's just we don't have a way to do that directly. The simple example that I was kind of thinking is, let's say that your widget is a visible widget and it's there and it's constantly displaying or with some level of refresh the value of some attribute that's going to be externally manipulated on the interaction. So it's constantly saying, like, if there was a score value or something, constantly updating what that value is.
Support probably wouldn't want to hear me say this, and I probably shouldn't say it, but if you wanted to, you could poll the handler and just keep polling it. That probably would be a good idea for all things like that. But that's one way you could go about it. I know there's limit parameter handlers you probably want to execute at one time. There is a way, you could use a handler to ask what that value is. Really, the smart way to go about doing something like that would be to probably not use a handler. You want to be able to have an authenticated ICWS session that can actually subscribe to that, so you actually are notified when that changes.
Yeah, we have ICWS APIs that can watch for attribute changes, so you could have an extension that calls those APIs and then reacts to those change events. That's probably the way we do it. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that handler, is that an actual customization point, or is that
This is a custom, yes, this is, so there is a widget integration handler, and that's actually what that subroutine is going back from, and then this is an integration point that we've added.
Okay.
Yes.
What version is that?
This is in 2018 R4 and up. So it's been out there for a while. It just hasn't had a lot of visibility.
Okay, good.
And what was the system handler thing?
Widgets integration.
Widgets integration.
Yep. And what that system handler does is it pretty much just, there's a little magic that we have to do in there in order to be able to make it to where you can just create your own functions like this and also get responses back. Because the way that traditional custom notifications work is that they're asynchronous. But because we don't have a session, it's expecting that you can subscribe to those events. So there was some magic that we had to do to make it work this way. But it worked out pretty well. So this is actually what that looks like. You have here, this is actually just a kind of a view of the documentation where you have this ICPS widgets handler notification, and the event ID is actually the event ID that you choose to create. There's actually, in the back end, if you're familiar with custom notifications, there's actually one that we hard code there for widgets, so it's being locked into not being able to execute any handler that you want. It's always going to be this handler, but the items here that you have that you can work with is the event ID that you choose to set, whether or not that you want a response, that data, which is a list of strings, and if for whatever reason, there is, maybe you're doing something that's extensive or not that reliable, there's a way to put a timeout there, so it will just fail, and nothing will get hung for some excessive period. So this could just be, you don't need to have a session, ICPS session for this, and that's pretty much how that works there. It's independent of a session, and it works directly in the widget's namespace. Okay, so now we're going to go into a demo just for contextual data pops, and really what this is going to look at is what does our custom extension look like? How is it like deployed to a website? Oops, jumped away from me there. How do we configure that custom extension within Interaction Connect? Begin a web chat and choose notes applied, or basically observe the notes that are applied to chat interaction. So this is part of a deviate from my PowerPoint, and hopefully all the preparation I've done is going to work well. Okay, so let's pretend here we have a site actually here. Okay, gotcha, thanks. Thank you. So let's see how I can get this guy back over. Maybe if I I think if I do this, it'll be there. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so let's imagine here that I have a website. We'll call it gcare. And as I keep refreshing this, I'm noticing up here that I have this account number, and it's changing each time. This is just as an example. So this account number could be, if I'm a logged in user or whatever that case is, I might want this context to go directly to an agent in PureConnect. So under interaction notes, they know exactly what that account number is. Maybe it's a ticket number, whatever the case is there. And so really then, this would be an example of how we're able to get some information that is proprietary in some sense to that website over to PureConnect. And I understand here that we have some resolution sort of things here where we're looking at things that might not be that zoomed in, so I'm going to try to be conscious of that as we move forward. So really then what I have at that point is a web chat widget here, which is a normal web chat widget. There's nothing special about it, really. And that's pretty much it from this point. I'm going to not go into the configuration of the widget itself. We're going to assume that we have a web chat that's configured. So if I'm wanting to accomplish this, I'm going to first go to something like, let's say, I know, for example, that this number here is actually being stored, say, on the window. So let's suppose here that I open up this custom extension here that we're wanting to use. And I'm actually going to drop in this gcare HTM so we can just see what this looks like. And really what's happening here is I'm going to make sure that we're all zoomed in and we can all see pretty well. Okay. Is that good for everyone? Okay. So really, whenever I'm generating this account number, just in my case, I'm just assigning here to the window. it could be, this is just for an example, this could be coming from anywhere. It could be coming from any sort of anywhere service. It could be coming from anywhere under the sun. But what it's intending to show is just the fact that at some point when this loads, there's an account number that's being assigned to some location. And this is how this is being generated. So I know that what I'm wanting to capture is window.account number. That's what's writing it. Down here's my standard script tag. But that's really all that's here in this particular example. So now when we go over here to the notes extension that's loading, what you'll see here is something very similar to what we saw before. We're doing this app.register extension. We're registering our notes plugin with the bus. We want to do some event, or basically whenever the web chat service is ready. And we want to set the notes for the interaction to be based on the account number. And in this case, this is where we glue things in together, window.account number. Now, because this is like a completely separate JavaScript file that doesn't even exist, it might not even exist on the customer's page, or on the customer's website here. But the thing is that it gets injected in, like it is a part of everything else. So whenever this is injected in, it's going to have access, in this case, to window.account number. It could be the same thing for an indoor service or however you choose to write the extension. So that's what's kind of nice about it being injected. So that's where it's gluing in this case, the actual account number, and setting it over here where the glue we have for calling that command that's setting the chat notes. So that's where those two pieces come in together and how they are essentially paired. And it's through that pairing of these commands and the script of these events that you're able to take what you need from the website in whichever context and get that back in to PureConnect. So once I have Notes extension, the next thing I'm going to want to do is open up Interaction Connect. We're going to go ahead and choose the station. I realize that this resolution is bad, so we'll zoom into specifically what we're interested in here. In this case, we're just interested here in this custom extension area over here on the right. And under custom extension, I've already put in here custom extension, and for now, this is just a location where internally I have this notes extension JavaScript loading from. It's not even loading from anywhere where I might have the actual website or otherwise. So by adding in this extension list, whatever, I can load any number of extensions I want. And what will happen is when Widgets was loading at runtime, it's going to go through this list, and it's just going to inject those in as if they were just a part of anything else that's loading. So this gives us a way to host things from the cloud, so to speak, but still take your extensions and make them a part of it at load time. Once this is placed in here and saved on, in this case, our plugin, that's it. We don't. There's nothing else you have to do. Once you have your custom extension written and you have it placed somewhere on some location where it's accessible, you just simply add in the URL, and there's nothing else there that you have to do with that. Once that's saved, and this can happen, you could add more extensions, and then as soon as you refresh, it's going to be loaded in at runtime. Once that's done, that's all you have to do. So an example then of how this works is, if we were to go ahead and start a chat. Thanks for bearing with my scrolling skills here, I appreciate it. So, just do some random for name, Smith at, our subject is new chat. So I can start this chat, and I notice here that it's alerting user 1, which happens to be my user right here. And I'm going to pick this up before I go ACN available. But you'll notice here under my interaction notes that my account number is 8750, which matches the account number that I have over here that was just generated at random. And the way that worked was whenever the web page loaded, it loaded that custom extension, which set that context. So whenever the web chat was started, it used the ICWS API, which is what we use, a public API that you can write any custom application for. You can write your own application that's using these same things, and it just called the start chat, and specify the fact that you wanted this information to appear as notes, and that's how it appeared in Interaction Connect. So there, in scope, yeah, there's a custom extension, meaning that there's some custom stuff that has to be done. There's some JavaScript involved, but there's really not a lot. Once you have a couple of those things in place, or that basic template, you can really be pretty powerful in the way that you're getting things into PureConnect. The other thing I want to show, that's pretty much the end of the demo that I had there, but one thing I want to show is there's a great set of tools here that the team has done for widgets that makes this really, really awesome. And what that is the console plugin. And it can be accessed here by running a command to actually open it. So in this case, it's going to be console.open. Let's see, it's bus. Let's see, not fallible. There we go. Okay, so what this neat little window is up here is once you've registered, what this has is it has a list here of all the plugins that has been registered with CXBus. So this is like a debug window for CXBus. So you can see that under web chat service, for example, I can actually go over here under commands, and at the very bottom, and I'm going to try to zoom in here, it's probably not going to let me get much better resolution, you can actually see that set chat routing context, those the set additional chat attributes. That's what the purpose is of registering those commands at the startup, is because when you do that, you're making all those available to every other plugin and every other extension so they can use those. And you can actually use this then to actually test those out and see how they work. And you can do this for any plugin that exists in widgets. You can also do the same thing. It's console.open. Yeah, and I have a picture of that too in the resources section at the end. So I want to make sure that this PowerPoint is available on the site. So yeah, you'll definitely have the ability to find that there as well. So then under events as well, you have the same list of plugins here. And if we were to choose something like, say, web chat service, I have things like agent connected, agent disconnected, agent typing started, agent typing stopped. There's very fine granularity of events that you can subscribe to and take some action on. So you can imagine that there really isn't any blockers to do really whatever you want to do when you have the ability to subscribe to these type of events. One thing I want to point out is you'll find out there's places where you have things that are called web chat and then web chat service. The difference between the two is that web chat is going to be concerned with, you have two layers with extensions or plugins. You have this UI layer, which is things that you're seeing in the interface. But then you have this back layer that might be concerned with when an agent starts typing, when an agent disconnects. So that's something that you'd see at, say, the web chat service. Web chat, though, would be more concerned with the UI. So it's going to be more concerned with how do I open the window, how do I close the window, should I show the chat button, should I hide the chat button, those type of things. So a good example could be if I want to, say, open the window, assuming that, well, it's already open now, but suppose we want to minimize. When I asked you that minimize just now, that window went away. So that shows an example then of the fact that everything that you would want to do in the functionality of other plugins, you can just execute a command on the bus. And you have this great tool here to help you understand what those actually do, what ones that you create, and how they'll actually function, and actually see those events in real time and watch them through here. That's all I had there for the demo. The other two pieces, I'm going to try to restart this PowerPoint. I'm not the best PowerPoint person, so bear with me. Okay, I think we recovered. So the next thing I wanted to mention here is the resources that we have, and this is an example here of what you'll find under the. This is just an example for every single event that you have for all the native plugins that are supported through Genesis. Within the widgets reference API, you'll find examples like web chat of what you can do and how you would call it in your custom extension and what you can expect for it to do. This is just an example of what it looks like, and you would find a very detailed description of how all those things work and how you would tie into those by looking at that documentation. The final piece here is what we just looked at, and it's the CXBus console plugin. At the very top here shows what I did to actually open it from the Google Chrome. And this is an invaluable resource for whenever you're working with custom extensions, because this gives you a direct way to know that your custom extension is registered. The system, the bus, knows about it, executing those events, understanding what you can do with other plugins, and having a single way of doing that without having to write maybe a custom extension that is just testing things out. Like, well, I wonder what this does. And then maybe there's an error, there's that loop of development time that goes into that. This takes all that away and makes it very easy, because then you have a way to immediately get that feedback of what's going on. And I think that's all I've had today. I'm happy to answer any questions I can and help out in any way. A lot of the stuff is new, so if there's stuff that's not documented, we're doing the best that we can to get that out there. There's so many different use cases that are emerging with these things, and as we're learning about them and product management, I guess, prioritizes them, there's a lot more, I guess, out there to add in. So with that, that's all I got.